I will tell you what the river gave me, because I have never been the kind of man who pretends the gifts came from his own deserving. The Keth runs along the northern boundary of Valdreth from the Iron Pine ridgeline all the way down to where it flattens into the frozen marshland, and in the cold season it becomes a thing of deception. It looks solid. It has the gray-white stillness of something you can trust. And then you step onto it with 300 pounds of wolf behind you and it decides, quite without warning, that it has had enough of bearing weight. We were scouting the boundary. Myself and two of my lieutenants, Brennan and Ord, in wolf form, because wolf form is faster and quieter, and the northern fringe had shown tracks I did not like. A rival pack's mark scratched into the bark of the iron pines, fresh enough that the sap hadn't sealed over it. I had not been sleeping well. That is not an excuse. It is simply the truth of where my attention was. I was thinking about territory lines and challenger packs, and the council meeting I had to chair the morning after next, and I stepped onto the Keth without testing the ice first. 3 things happened in a sequence, so fast they might as well have been simultaneous. The ice cracked, a sound like a blade through tallow, clean and final. Brennan and Ord scrambled back to solid ground, because their weight was distributed differently, and they had better instincts than I did in that particular moment. And I went through. The Keth in the cold season is not merely cold. It is the kind of cold that reaches inside the body and takes hold of everything it finds and squeezes. I shifted, because a man can swim when a wolf cannot get purchase on ice, and I swam, and I hit the underside of the ice shelf twice before I found the break I'd made and got my arms over the edge, and I could not pull myself out. My hands were not cooperating. The cold had them. I could feel my heart doing something unpleasant and arrhythmic, and I thought, with the peculiar clarity of a man who is about to make a very embarrassing exit from the world, I am going to drown in the boundary river of my own kingdom, and Brennan is going to have to explain this to the council. And then something grabbed my wrist. Not a wolf, a hand. Small, strong, terrifyingly determined, the grip of someone who had made the decision and was not revisiting it regardless of what I weighed. A second hand joined the first on my forearm. I felt myself move, not easily, not without effort, because I am not a small man and I was dead weight from the cold, but I moved, scraped over the ice edge, got a knee up. Got pulled again hard, and then I was on the surface, lying flat, and someone was saying in a low, urgent voice, "Don't shift back. Stay flat. Spread the weight. Move toward me. Move." I moved toward her. I did not know yet that it was a her. I could barely see. My eyes were doing something ungrateful with the light. But I could hear the voice measured, no panic in it, the voice of someone who had done difficult things before and understood that panic was a luxury, and I followed it the way a drowning man follows the only sound that makes sense. She got me to the bank. I have no clean memory of how. I know she did not let go of me once, and I know the distance was not short, and I know that by the time I was on solid ground with the river behind me, I was shaking so hard I could feel it in my jaw, and she was not shaking at all. "Can you walk?" she said. "Yes," I said. This was optimistic. "Then walk," she said, and put my arm over her shoulder, and we walked. I did not know where she was taking me. I was not in a position to negotiate the point. She had a shelter in the iron pines, not a cabin exactly, more a constructed space, the kind a person builds when they know how to use what a forest offers and have had plenty of time to practice. The walls were pine frame and packed bark, low and thick, which meant it held heat the way a fist holds water, imperfectly but enough. There was a fire going, small, controlled, smokeless, the fire of someone who did not want to be found, and she brought me to it and put a blanket around me and said nothing for a moment, just watched me with gray eyes that were doing a very thorough inventory of my condition. "Your wolf," she said finally. It was not a question. "Yes." "What pack?" I hesitated, not from deceit, from the simple fact that I was not sure the answer would help me in this particular moment. I did not know who this woman was or what her relationship to any pack might be. "Northern," I said. She looked at me for a moment in a way that suggested she understood what I had not said. Then she turned back to the fire and began heating water in a battered tin cup. "Your men," she said. "On the bank. They know I can survive cold." "Can you?" "Usually." She handed me the cup. The water was hot enough to matter, and she had put something into it, dried bark or roots or both, something astringent and warming that went down like a reprimand and left heat behind it. I drank the whole thing. "Thank you," I said. She shrugged. It was the shrug of someone who had made a decision. She would help this stranger, and had already moved past it to the practical matter of what came next. I watched her. She moved through the small space with the economy of someone who had been alone long enough that every motion was efficient because waste was not something she could afford. She was lean, not thin, but pared down, the way a blade is pared down, nothing excess. Her hair was dark and she wore it tied back. Her hands, when she worked, were sure. She checked my temperature, laid the back of her hand on my neck without asking, brief and clinical, and apparently found it acceptable, because she sat down across the fire from me and said nothing. "I'm Arvhin," I said. "Sella," she said, and then, because I waited, "I'm not with any pack." "Rogue. That's the word people use." She said it flatly, the way you say a word that has been used against you enough times that it has lost its power to sting, but that you have also not yet found a better word for. I noted that. I filed it away without being entirely sure why. "How long?" I said. She looked at the fire, long enough to stop counting. Brennan and Ord, I knew, would be tracking me. They would find the shelter eventually because they were good at their work. But the night was deep and the iron pines were thick and the fire was smokeless, and I thought, not yet, not immediately. And for reasons I could not have articulated in that moment, reasons that may have had something to do with the cold still leaving me slowly, or with the astringent warmth of the cup she'd given me, or with the quality of the silence she kept, I found I did not mind the wait. She gave me dry clothes from a pack that she produced from beneath a low shelf. They were too small for me, but they were dry, which was the relevant quality. She looked away while I changed. Then she banked the fire to the precise level that would hold through the night, lay down on her own bedroll with her back to me, and went to sleep with the immediacy of someone who sleeps whenever they can because they have learned not to depend on the opportunity returning. I lay awake for a long time. I had been Alpha King of Valdrath for 11 years. I had survived 3 challenges, 2 border wars, 1 outbreak of a wasting sickness that had taken 7 of my pack's eldest and left me sitting vigil for a week straight, and the slow attrition of a loneliness so familiar I had long since stopped recognizing it as loneliness and simply called it the nature of the position. I was 34 years old. I had not found a mate. My council had long since given up suggesting candidates with any real conviction, and had settled into a yearly ritual of offering names, and accepting my refusal with the resigned patience of people who have decided this is simply how the king is. I lay in a stranger's shelter in the iron pines and listened to the fire settle and looked at the ceiling, which was pine bark and shadow, and felt something in my chest that I could not name. Not the cold leaving, something else, something that had arrived when she grabbed my wrist. I did not examine it. I was not ready to examine it. I closed my eyes and waited for morning. She was already awake when morning came, and she had heated water again and had something edible, dried meat, and hard flatbread. The provisions of someone whose relationship with food is strictly functional, laid out on the low shelf. I sat up. She glanced at me. "Temperature's better," she said. "I heal fast." "Wolf fast," she said, in a tone that indicated she was revising her estimate of how quickly she needed me gone. Then, almost as an afterthought, "Did you want to send word to your men?" "They'll find me." "I know," she said. "That's what I said." A corner of her mouth moved. Not a smile exactly, the ghost of one, the muscle memory of something that had been used less often than it was built for. I stood up. I was steadier than I had been. I rolled the borrowed clothes. I would send something back for them, I decided. It seemed the minimum decency, and set them on the shelf, because I had, fortunately, been wearing enough of my own in the river that there was something to shift back into. She watched me do all of this with the careful neutrality of someone maintaining a transaction, and then she began to bank the fire again, clearly preparing to move on. "Where are you going?" I said. "Away from here," she said. "Your men will track your scent to this place. I'd rather not be here when they arrive." Reasonable. I understood the logic. A rogue female found sheltering the Alpha King of Valdreth, even with innocent intent, would have reason to be cautious about how that meeting went. "They won't harm you," I said. She looked at me with those gray eyes that had learned not to ask for anything. "Forgive me," she said with perfect politeness, "if I'd rather not test that." She was right. I knew she was right. And I also knew, standing in that small space with the banked fire between us and the iron pine light coming through the gaps in the bark wall, that something was happening to me that I had not been prepared for and that I did not know what to do with. My wolf, the part of me that lives below the words, below the choices, below the 11 years of kingship and the 3 challenges, and the loneliness I'd stopped naming, had gone very still. Not afraid, not angry, still in the way deep water is still when something vast is moving through it. I crossed the space between us in 2 steps. She did not step back. She was not the kind of person who stepped back, but her hand moved fast, practiced, and there was a knife in it which I respected, and she held it between us with the calm of someone who had done this before and knew what she was doing. "Don't," she said. "I'm not going to touch you," I said. "I need you to understand that. I'm not going to touch you." She looked at my face, reading it, cataloging it with those gray eyes the way she'd cataloged my temperature, clinically, completely. "Then what?" she said. I did not know how to explain what was happening in my chest, in the hollow space that had been the king's private country for 11 years, in a way that would mean anything to a woman who had spent long enough outside every boundary that belonging had become a foreign language to her. So I said the plainest version of the truth, and I let her do what she wanted with it. "I know what you are to me," I said. "I don't think you know yet, and I'm not going to tell you what to do with it, but I'm asking you not to leave." She looked at me for a long time. The knife did not lower. "Why?" she said. "Because the river gave me something I didn't deserve," I said, "and I would like the chance to be worth it." The knife stayed where it was, but she did not leave. We stayed 3 days in that shelter in the iron pines. I sent Brennan, when he arrived on the first morning, back to Valdreth Hold with a message for the council. Boundary scouting completed, minor delay, no emergency. Brennan looked at me, looked at Sella, who was standing at the far side of the shelter with her arms crossed and the expression of someone waiting to see what shape the complication would take, and looked at me again with the particular expression of a man exercising monumental restraint. "Sire," he said. 3 days, I said. He went. I would owe him something for that. I made a note of it. Sella watched this exchange from across the shelter and said, when Brennan was gone, "He called you sire." "Yes," I said. A pause. "Arvhen," she said. "That's still my name." Another pause, then, "You're the Alpha King." "Yes." She looked at me for a very long time. Then she picked up her pack and walked to the door of the shelter. "Sella," I said. She stopped. Not because I'd commanded it, I had not. My voice carried no authority in it, nothing king-like, just a man saying a name he had known for less than a day and had no intention of letting go of. She stopped because she chose to. I understood that. I was careful to understand it because the difference mattered. "You pulled me out of the river," I said. "That is the whole of my claim on you. That, and the thing that happened between us this morning, which you felt as clearly as I did. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, and I'm not going to use either of them as a reason to make you stay. You can walk out that door. I won't send anyone after you." She had her hand on the doorframe. She did not turn around. "But," she said. "No, but," I said. "That's all, you can walk out. I'm telling you so you know it's a choice." A long silence. The iron pine light was thin and white. The cold outside the door was absolute. And between those two things was a woman who had been outside every boundary for so long she had forgotten that some boundaries are made to be walked through, not around. She turned around. She did not put the pack down, but she turned around. "I felt it," she said, flat. Not warm, not yielding, just accurate, because she was a person who, once she had decided to say a thing, said it exactly. "Yes," I said. "What does that mean?" she said. "What do you actually want from me? Not what the bond says. What do you want?" It was the right question. It was the only question that mattered, and I thought about it seriously because she deserved a serious answer. "I want to know who you are," I said. "I want to know how long you've been a rogue and why and what it cost you. I want to understand what kind of woman pulls a stranger out of a frozen river in the middle of the night and then makes him hot water and dried meat and expects nothing and asks for nothing. I stopped, started again. I have been king for 11 years. I have been alone for all of them. I have been so alone for so long that I had stopped recognizing it as a problem and started treating it as a condition of the work. And then you grabbed my wrist, and something in me went quiet in a way it has not been quiet in 11 years, and I would like very much to understand what that is before you leave, if you're willing." She looked at me for a long time. Then she put the pack back down. "I'm not promising anything," she said. "I know. I don't know how to, I'm not good at." She stopped. The ghost of that muscle memory almost smile again, but different this time. Something rueful in it, self-aware. "I've been alone a long time too," she said. "I know," I said. "We can be bad at it together." She looked at me. Something shifted, just slightly, in the gray of her eyes, not warmth, exactly, not yet, more the possibility of it, like light beginning on the far edge of the river before the sun has cleared the tree line. She sat back down. We talked, in the broken way of two people who have forgotten the rhythm of it. She talked in fragments, and I listened to the fragments and did not press for the connective tissue between them. I learned her that way, piece by piece, the way you learn the shape of a forest by walking it rather than mapping it. She had been from a pack once, a mid-territory pack, not large, not particularly powerful. She had had a mate, or the beginning of one. It had not been a true bond, she said, looking at the fire, which she never seemed entirely comfortable not having something to look at besides me. An arrangement that both parties had hoped would become something more and that had not. When it ended badly. Not with violence, she said, because she was not interested in dwelling on that part of the story. It ended badly in the way that some things end badly, which is to say that the people around her chose a side and it was not hers, and the pack that had been her home decided, more or less formally, that she did not belong in it anymore. "They didn't cast you out," I said. "No," she said. "They made it clear and then I left." "There's a difference." "Is there?" She considered this. "The second kind is cleaner," she said. "When you choose to go, you take yourself with you. When they push you out, you spend a long time trying to remember which pieces were yours." I filed that away too. I was filing a great many things away. I had the feeling, the particular feeling you get when you are learning something important, and you know you are learning something important even though you do not yet know the shape of what it will teach you, that I would be returning to these fragments for a long time. She had been rogue for 7 years. 7 years. The number settled in my chest like a stone in water. 7 years of building shelters in places she would not be found. 7 years of knowing the forest well enough to read it the way other people read words. The track patterns, the ice conditions, the places where the territory lines blurred and a rogue could move without being challenged. 7 years of helping when she could, in the small and practical ways available to a woman with her skills, pulling livestock from flooded terrain, routing supply lines for small settlements when the main paths iced over, treating injuries when the nearest healer was too far to reach. No one paid her. Most people did not ask her name. She did these things because she had determined, somewhere in the second year of being a rogue, that usefulness was a kind of belonging. It was not the same as being claimed. It was not the same as being chosen, but it was something to point at and say, I was here. I did something. This is where I've been. She had pulled wolves from the Keth before. Not mine, others. 2 in the years before from accidents or crossings gone wrong. She did not know their packs. She did not ask. Do you always stay, I said, after you help? No, she said, usually I go. Why did you stay this time? She looked at me, not at the fire, at me. The cold was still bad, she said. I wasn't sure you'd make it through the night without the fire. This was true. It was also, I was reasonably certain, not the whole truth, but I did not say so. Besides, she said, quieter, looking back at the fire, you were very large. I wasn't sure I could actually move you if I needed to. The corner of her mouth moved again. I watched it happen with a feeling in my chest that I had no clean word for. I appreciate the pragmatism, I said. I appreciate you not drowning, she said. On the second day, I told her about Valdreth. Not in the way a king speaks of his kingdom, not with the formal language of territory and governance and alliance. I told her the way a man speaks of a place he has spent 11 years of his life inside without always remembering to love it. The iron pine forests that run the whole northern boundary. The way the hold looks in winter with the amber lanterns lit against the black stone. The river itself, which I had misjudged, and which was, I admitted, not the first time I had misjudged it. The pack, which was 300 wolves in the territory and 40 in the hold proper, most of them people I had known since before my father's death, most of them good. She listened. She asked questions that were small and specific, the kind of questions that tell you what the asker actually wants to know. She asked about the rivers because she navigated by rivers. She asked about the iron pine density because that told her about shelter and concealment. And then, halfway through, she seemed to notice what she was doing, cataloging Valdreth the way she cataloged forests, looking for the places a rogue could move through it without being challenged, and she stopped and went quiet. You're not a threat to anyone in my territory, I said. I know how packs work, she said. A rogue female at the Alpha's hold would be. What I say she is, I said, and then because that was too blunt, I'm sorry. That sounded, I meant. The pack takes its tone from me. If I say you are welcome, you are welcome. Is that how it works? It's how Valdreth works, yes. She looked at me with an expression I could not entirely read. There was something in it that was not quite doubt. Doubt was too active, too hot for what she was feeling. It was closer to the expression of someone who has been told a road exists that they have never personally seen, and are not sure whether to trust the account. And if you changed your mind, she said, about what I am to you, then you would be a guest who had helped me, I said, and I would owe you a debt, and my pack would know it. She looked at the fire. I'm not used to debts in my favor, she said. I know, I said, I'd like to change that. She did not answer, but she did not look away from me either, which was, I was learning, the thing to watch with her. Not what she said, but what she chose to keep looking at. On the third morning, I made a mistake. Ord arrived. He had been circling, patient, waiting for Brennan's 3-day limit to expire, and he came to the shelter door and gave me the boundary report that I had originally gone to gather. Standing at the door, in front of Sella, using my full title, which he did not think twice about because it was natural to him and he had not been briefed. The northern marks are fresh, sire, he said, but the scout team thinks it's a bluff Koreth pack posturing before the cold eases, not an actual movement. They want your decision by tomorrow morning. He went. I turned around. Sela had her pack on her shoulder. Not because of Ord, not because of the boundary report. I understood that. I could see it in the set of her jaw, in the way she was holding herself, upright and braced the way she had been when she'd first turned around at the door 2 days ago. Something had crystallized for her, sitting in that small space listening to the practical machinery of my life arrive at the door. The northern boundary, the pack's decision, the Alpha King's choice. The architecture of a world that had, in the way of such worlds, never had a space for her in it. Sela, I said. This was, she started and stopped, started again. You should go back, she said. You have a pack, you have a boundary decision. You have 40 wolves in a hold and 300 in the territory, and all of them need the Alpha King, and the Alpha King should go back. Yes, I said. And I'd like you to come with me. I can't, she said. Why not? She looked at me with the gray eyes that had learned not to ask for anything. Because I don't know how, she said. It was the plainest thing she had said in 3 days, stripped bare, nothing defensive about it, just the truth, flat and clean. I don't know how to be in a pack, I've forgotten. And she paused. And even if I remembered, even if you wanted, you're the Alpha King. You can't bring a rogue female to the hold and introduce her to the pack as whatever this is. My mate, I said. Without them asking questions, she said, as if I hadn't spoken. Without them having opinions, without all of it. They'll have opinions regardless, I said. That's the nature of a pack. They'll have opinions about whether I've been out here 3 days, and they'll have opinions about the boundary decision, and they'll have opinions about what I eat for the morning meal. That's what it is. It doesn't change what I know. She shook her head. Not disagreement, something more like exhaustion. The exhaustion of someone who has been trying to talk themselves out of wanting something for a very long time and is tired of the effort. You don't know me, she said. I know you pulled me out of a river at midnight in the cold season, I said. I know you didn't ask what I was worth to you before you did it. I know you built a smokeless fire and gave me everything in your store and didn't touch me while I slept. I know you've been alone for 7 years and that you still pull strangers out of frozen rivers because you cannot make yourself be a person who doesn't. I know the bond. And I know that you can feel it too because you told me so, and you are not a person who lies about the things that matter. She looked at me. What do you want me to do with that? She said. I want you to let me go back to the hold, I said. And I want you to wait here or wherever you would go, and I want you to understand that I will come back. I am not asking you to walk into Valdrath Hold today. I'm asking you to give me the chance to come back. And if I'm gone, she said, when you come back. Then I'll find you, I said. I know this forest now. The corner of her mouth moved. You nearly drowned in this forest, she said. Yes, I said, and I know it better now. Specifically, I know that if I fall into the Keth, you will pull me out. She stood very still for a moment. Then she put the pack back down, not with decision, exactly, more with the quietness of someone who has run out of arguments and found, to their own surprise, that they do not entirely mind. Go deal with your boundary, she said. I'll be back tomorrow, I said. I'll be here, she said, with the precision of someone making a promise they have weighed first. I went back to Valdrath Hold. I dealt with the boundary. I told Brennan because Brennan was the person I trusted and also the person who was going to notice regardless what had happened and what I intended to do and what I needed from him. He sat with this information for a moment and then said, She pulled you out of the river. Yes, I said, before she knew who you were. Yes. He nodded slowly, the nod of a man updating a great number of things at once. All right, he said. That was all. I went back to the Iron Pine shelter the next morning. She was there. We did not rush it. I need you to understand that, because I have heard the way these stories get told. The Alpha King claims his mate, the pack bows the end, And the truth is more deliberate than that, and Sella deserved the deliberateness. I came back to the shelter. I came back the next day, and the next. Sometimes I brought food from the Hold's kitchen, which she accepted with the practical grace of someone who had learned to take help when it arrived without making it complicated. Sometimes I brought nothing. Sometimes we sat at the fire and talked, and sometimes we sat at the fire and did not talk, and both of those were good. I learned her, piece by piece, the way I had begun in those first 3 days. I learned that she was originally from a river valley pack called the Sureth, 2 territories south, and that she did not speak of them with bitterness but with the careful neutrality of someone who has processed a thing completely and arrived at the far side of it. I learned that she could read ice conditions better than my best scouts, which I mentioned to Brennan, who immediately wanted to know if she'd be willing to consult. I learned that she had a dry, quiet humor that arrived unexpectedly, and that she was usually surprised when it made me laugh, as if she had half forgotten that making someone laugh was a thing you could do. I learned that the bond was not frightening to her exactly. More, foreign. She had spent 7 years building a life that was entirely her own, accountable to no one, dependent on no one, and the bond required her to imagine a world in which that accountability was not loss but its own kind of completeness. That took time. I was patient with the time, because I had spent 11 years being patient with loneliness, and found that patience was a muscle I had, at least, kept in reasonable condition. What I was not patient with was the idea of her in the cold alone one more winter. I told her this directly, on a morning in late cold season, when the light on the iron pines was the particular thin gold of approaching thaw, and she was sitting outside the shelter with her face turned up to it, the way you turn your face up to the first warmth you've been waiting for. "Come back with me," I said. She kept her face up to the light. Her eyes were closed. "You've been asking me that for 3 weeks," she said. "Yes," I said, "and I will continue to ask until the answer changes. I'm not going to stop asking." "That is extremely inconvenient," she said. "I know." She opened her eyes. The gold light was on her face. She looked at me, not the cataloging look, not the gray eyes learning temperature look, but something more direct, more open. A look I had not seen from her before, which may have been because it was new, or may have been because it had simply taken her this long to trust me with it. "What does it look like?" she said. "At the Hold, what does it actually look like for me?" I had thought about this. I had thought about it in the way I thought about boundary decisions and council meetings, carefully, from every angle because it mattered, and she deserved the same care I gave things that mattered. "You have your own quarters," I said. "You have space. You are not required to be in the Great Hall every night or at every meal. The pack will know who you are because I will tell them plainly before the full assembly, and after that, what they make of it is what a pack always makes of things, slowly and thoroughly and on their own terms. I won't tell you it's easy. I'll tell you that I will be there every step of it, and I will not let you stand alone in any room. And if I need to leave," she said, "not permanently, if I need to go back to the forest for a week, if I need." "Then you go," I said. "I know what you are, I know how you've lived. I'm not going to build walls." She looked at the light. "Your council is going to be very difficult about this," she said. "Yes," I said. "My council is difficult about everything. It is their primary function." The corner of her mouth, the almost smile, more present now than it had been in those first 3 days, less ghost, more real. "Arvin," she said. "Yes." "I don't know how to do this," she said. "I know," I said. "Neither do I. I've been king for 11 years, and I've never had a mate, and I have approximately no idea what I'm doing in any dimension of this situation." She looked at me. Then she looked at the forest, the iron pines, the light, the silver white of the Keth visible through the trees, the river that had dropped me at her feet like a very large and inconvenient problem, and turned out to be the best thing the cold season had ever done for me. She picked up her pack. She looked at me. "All right," she said, "show me the hold." We came out of the iron pines and through the northern gate of Valdrath Hold in the early afternoon, when the amber lanterns were beginning to matter against the pale winter light, and the black stone of the walls had the particular solid look of a thing that has been standing a very long time and intends to continue. Sella walked beside me. She did not hold my hand. She held herself with the vertical precision of a person who has decided to do something and is doing it, and I matched my pace to hers and said nothing and let her look. She looked at everything, the lanterns, the carved wolf frieze above the main gates, the pack members who stopped and watched as we came through, because the Alpha King returning from a 3-week absence with a woman none of them had ever seen was, obviously, something to watch, and whose eyes she met, one by one, without looking away. She was not afraid. I had known she would not be, but I had not known how she would carry it, and the way she carried it, straight-backed, gray-eyed, the pack's attention washing over her and not breaking anything, made something in my chest ache with a pride I had no right to yet and felt anyway. Brennan met us at the interior gate. He looked at Sella. He looked at me. He said to Sella with the frankness that was his defining quality, "You pulled him out of the Keth." "He's heavy," she said. "It wasn't easy." Brennan's expression underwent a number of rapid adjustments. He arrived at something that was, for Brennan, quite close to approval. "The council is assembled," he said to me. "You said before the full pack." "Yes," I said, "let's not wait." The great hall of Valdrath Hold is not a beautiful room. It is a large room, long and high-ceilinged, with the wolf frieze running the full length of both side walls, each wolf carved in the style of the old territory, thick-limbed and detailed, 307 of them for the 307 members of the pack, and each one named on the plinth beneath it. The floor is old stone, worn smooth. The lanterns are the amber ones they have been since my father's time, hung on iron chains from the beams. It smells like the fire, which has been burning in the central hearth for as long as anyone in the pack can remember. When I brought Sella through those doors, the hall was full. Full is perhaps not quite right. It was the assembled pack, those in the hold, which was 40 plus the council of 9, plus a further 30 who had come in from the territory, because word travels in a pack the way water travels down a slope, which is to say immediately and by the path of least resistance. 70 wolves standing in the great hall in the amber lantern light, watching us come through the doors. Sella walked in beside me. She looked at the wolf frieze. I watched her eyes move along it, counting. I saw the moment she understood what it was. Every wolf in the pack carved in stone, named, given permanence in the walls of their own hold. And I saw something happen in her face that she would not have wanted me to see, and so I looked away and gave her the privacy of the moment. I took my place at the head of the hall. She stood beside me, not behind me, not at a distance, beside me, because that was the truth of the thing, and I was done with every version of not saying it plainly. The pack was silent. 3 weeks ago, I said, I went through the ice of the Keth on the northern boundary in wolf form in the cold season in the dark. A pause. This is not a thing I recommend. A brief, careful ripple through the assembled pack. The woman standing beside me pulled me out. She did not know who I was. She did not ask. She took me to her shelter, gave me everything she had, kept the fire through the night, and kept nothing for herself. Another pause. Her name is Sella. She has been a rogue female for 7 years, which I will not be explaining or defending because it is her history and not mine to offer up. What I will tell you is this: she is my fated mate. The bond ignited in that shelter in the iron pines, and it is real, and I am naming it here before this pack, because anything less would be an insult to what she did and to what she is. I looked at Sella. She was looking at me. The gray eyes, the straight back, the face that had learned not to ask for anything, and underneath all of it, something that was beginning, carefully and at its own pace, to believe that asking was something it might be allowed to do. I turned back to the hall. She is welcome in this hold, I said, as my mate as herself, and as the woman whose steadiness and skill I would place next to any wolf in this pack without hesitation. If there are questions, I will answer them in time. If there are objections, I will hear them privately. Tonight, she has come a long way from the cold. That's what tonight is. The hall was very quiet. And then Brennan, who is not given to demonstration, who I have seen keep his face composed through a border war and an outbreak and 3 formal challenges, put his right fist to his chest and bent his head. One by one the pack followed. Not all at once, not in a sweep, that would have been theater and this was not. One at a time, in the amber lantern light, 70 wolves put their fists to their chests and bent their heads to a woman who had been a rogue for 7 years and who had not asked for any of it. Sella stood very still. I felt rather than saw the moment it reached her. The moment the cumulative weight of 70 acknowledgments landed somewhere in the space behind her ribs where the 7 years had lived. She did not cry. She was not a person who cried easily, I had learned. She spent her tears on private accounts, not public ones. But her jaw moved just once and her hands, which had been still at her sides, curled briefly, the way hands curl when they are holding something they were afraid of dropping. I put my hand over hers, just that. She let me. That night, after the hall had settled, and the pack had dispersed in the way of people who have received significant information and need to process it among themselves at appropriate volume, Brennan found me in the corridor outside the great hall and said, "The council will want a formal meeting." "Tomorrow," I said. "They'll ask about her standing, her pack history, the rogue status." "I know," I said. "Tell them to prepare their questions, and I'll answer them." He nodded. Then, Ord says she read the Keth ice better than he did, that she knew exactly where the shelf would give before he could scent it. "Yes," I said. "He wants to know if she'd consult on the boundary routes." "Ask her," I said. "Not me, ask her." He looked at me. "She's good," he said. "Yes," I said. "I mean," he paused. "She's actually good, not good for a rogue, good." "I know," I said. "I know exactly who she is." He went. I went back to find Sella, who was in the quarters I'd shown her, smaller than my own, her request, which I had honored without comment because I understood what she was doing, which was preserving a room she could retreat to if the whole of it became too much, sitting on the edge of the low bed with her pack still on the floor beside her, not unpacked. She looked up when I came in. "Your council is going to be very busy," she said. "I know," I said. "They like being busy, it gives them purpose." She looked at the pack, at the room, at the window which faced north, which I had noted when I gave her the choice, the northern window, through which on clear nights you could see the edge of the iron pines and on the right nights the silver line of the Keth. "I left a lot of things in the shelter," she said. "I'll send someone to collect them," I said, "or we can go ourselves." "Ourselves," she said quickly. Then, as if she'd surprised herself, "I'd rather go myself." "Then we'll go," I said, "when you want." She looked at the window. "The wolves," she said, "in the great hall, when they did that." "Yes," I said. "I didn't expect that," she said. "I know. I didn't expect to." She stopped, started again. "I've been a rogue for 7 years," she said. "You know what that is. It's not dramatic, it's not a sentence. It's just you stop appearing on any ledger. You stop mattering to any accounting. You become someone who moves through the world and the world doesn't adjust to accommodate you. It just continues around you, and you learn to navigate the gaps." She paused. "And then 70 wolves you've never met put their hands to their chests and suddenly you're on the ledger again." "You're on the freeze," I said. She looked at me. "Not yet," I said, "but you will be. That's how Valdrath works. Every member of this pack is carved in the wall. Every name is given permanence." I paused. It will have your name when it's done, and what you want carved beneath it is your choice." She looked at me for a very long time. "You're very certain about all of this," she said. Not accusation, observation. The gray eyes clear and level. "About you," I said. "Yes." "You've known me 3 weeks," she said. "I've known you since the moment you grabbed my wrist in the dark," I said. "That's how this works. I didn't design it, but I'm not going to pretend it's less than it is because the timeline is unconventional." The corner of her mouth moved. The almost smile, less ghost than it had been, more real, more hers. "Unconventional," she said. "That's the word you're using." "It seemed polite," I said. She looked at the window, at the iron pines dark against the last of the light. "I don't know how to be a Luna," she said. "I want you to know that, whatever comes of this. I don't know the forms, the protocols, the whatever a Luna does. I didn't grow up learning it." "Neither did I learn it," I said, "and I've been king for 11 years. We figure it out as we go." She looked at me again. "You're going to keep saying things like that until I stop being afraid," she said. "Yes," I said. "Is it working?" A pause, a real pause, not a deflecting one, the pause of someone actually measuring something. "A little," she said. "Good," I said. "I'll come back tomorrow with more." I went to the door, stopped. "Sella," I said. "Yes." "The north window was on purpose," I said, "in case you needed to see the forest, so you'd know it was still there." She looked at me. The real look, the one she'd turned on me in the iron pine light, open and direct, more present than careful. "Thank you," she said. I left her to the room and the window and the choice that was, I believed, slowly becoming something she intended to keep. That was 2 years ago. The council asked their questions. I answered them. They had opinions. The council always has opinions. And some of them were difficult and required several conversations, and at least one meeting that ran until the amber lanterns burned low. And through all of it, Sella sat in her northern window room or walked the iron pine forest with Ord, who turned out to be the most practical choice for her introduction to the pack's boundary work. And she let the process run at its own pace because she understood, better than most, that belonging is not given. It is built slowly, by the repeated accumulation of days. She consulted on the northern boundary routes. Ord had not exaggerated. She read the Keth ice in a way that no one in the pack had seen before, which led to 3 route adjustments that have not in 2 years caused a single accident. The pack noticed this. The pack is practical in the way of people whose lives have material consequences, and practical acknowledgement, it turns out, was a language Sella already knew. She goes back to the iron pine forest sometimes. She tells me when she's going, and she tells me when she'll return, and she comes back when she says she will. The first time she went, she was gone 4 days, and I did not send anyone after her. Not because it was easy, but because I had promised, and the only thing more important to me than finding her was being the kind of person she could trust to let her go and wait. She came back on the 4th day with 2 orphaned wolf pups she'd found in the outer forest, which she delivered to Brennan with the practical air of someone noting a logistics problem. And Brennan stood in the corridor for a moment and then said, to no one in particular, "Well, the Luna found more wolves." She laughed. I heard it from down the corridor, a real laugh, unguarded, the laugh of a person who has become, slowly and thoroughly, someone who laughs. And I stood in the corridor and felt the thing in my chest that I had felt since the moment she grabbed my wrist in the dark, which was not the cold leaving but something arriving, something taking up the space the cold had held and filling it entirely. Her name is carved in the frieze now, between Brennan and Ord at her request, because they were the first 2 wolves in the hold to see her clearly and act accordingly. Beneath the carving in the old territory script, Sella of Valdrath, rogue no more. She chose the words herself. I will not pretend that the pack had no adjustments to make, or that the council was uniformly gracious, or that 7 years of being outside every boundary became 7 months of smooth belonging. It was not smooth. It was the ordinary difficult work of two people in a pack learning each other, and it had its hard days, and she and I had our own hard days too, days when the old language of solitude reasserted itself in her, and she went quiet in a way that was not the quiet of comfort, but the quiet of someone retreating to a room she knew well, and days when the weight of the kingship pressed down in a way that left me distant when I did not mean to be, and we were learning, both of us, how to find each other in those days instead of away from each other. But she pulls me back every time, not dramatically, not with the river's force, with the quiet, deliberate precision of someone who has decided to stay and means it. The gray eyes, the straight back, the hand that reaches, not waiting to be asked. The river gave me something I did not deserve, on a night in the cold season when I stepped onto ice without testing it first. I have spent 2 years trying to be worth what it gave me. I think on the best days, on the days when the amber lanterns are lit and the iron pine light comes through the north window, and she looks at me with the look that is no longer careful but simply open, simply hers. I think I am getting closer.